All right, sorry guys, I'm ready. All right, let me share my screen with y'all. And you can see code, right? Good, okay. I remember the first time, or I think it was the first time or second time, I was showing my other screen. All right, so today what I'm going to talk about is JavaScript objects. So I forget who it was, I think it was Tim or Dane who talked about JavaScript objects before. And how you like initialize and things like that. And one thing I want to talk more about was like going into more depth in terms of like methods in an object, and then also like constructors as well. Have you guys heard of these things before, like a constructor or a method for an object? Just making sure.
I've heard of them, but I'd like them explained.
Okay. And I'm definitely going to explain them. Yeah,
Okay.
just making sure. So what essentially what, like if we have a method, right? So we have these attributes. I use attributes. I think in JavaScript they use properties, but I'm used to using, these are called properties or attributes, like this horsepower, right? A car has horsepower, it has miles, right? But then there's also different things that a car can do, right? It can drive. I just did a simple one. You can have a value of a car, right? You can have different things that are associated with the cars, in which they're the function of the car, right? Which we call like the member functions or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, so if we want to, make like define an object, right? So, and we want to give it some type of function, right? And we want to use maybe horsepower and miles in the same thing, right? So that's what I came up with, the value of the car. So I'm defining the value of this car as the horsepower times 1,000 minus the miles times 0.1. It's some just random arbitrary value of car. I don't know how this is for. But so what we would do is we define it just like we would an attribute, right? Here's the function that we're going to do, right? A value of car, and you're usually going to name it something to give you an indication of what it's going to do. So this is going to return the value of the car in this case. And then we have not semicolon, colon, the function, right? Because this is the data type that it's going to be. Okay. And then we're going to define the function. See, in this case, we don't give the function a name, right? We're just going to say it's a function kind of object type, and then we're going to define the function in here. So one thing you'll notice is this thing right here, or it's just actually the word this. And so what this is basically indicating is it's pointing back to these horsepowers or value of car. Because what I could do is I could pass in a horsepower or something like this, right? And then I could, because sometimes you could have functions, what they're called as known as getters and setters. And what that basically means is you would get a value right here, or you would set a value. So you would pass a value into it. So say I have a setter for horsepower. I'll just make one real quick. So we're going to say function set HP, right? And so what that function is going to take is it's going to take a horsepower, right? What we want to actually do is we're going to say this dot HP is equal to horsepower. And so what we're really going to say is this will basically be part of, let's actually do this instead. Car dot set HP. And we can do this because objects in this case are dynamically typed. That means that we can change them as we go. Like we can add functions, we can add attributes and stuff like that. So what basically this is I'm going to set HP so I can pass into it an HP, and then it will set it. So effectively I could do something like car dot set HP like this, right? And then I can pass in some value into it. So in this case, I could pass in 12 like that. And then what it's going to do is it's going to take that HP and it's going to set it as the HP for the member variable car. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I like how you explain it. I couldn't do it that way.
Yeah.
Re-explain the this thing. That I know that's super basic, but I've never.
I'm not really great at explaining it. Let me see. So this, if anybody else is really good at explaining
Isn't it
they can
because
chime
you
in.
could technically have those values other places, and so it's saying
Yeah.
you're using it right now, what's set in this particular place, not someplace else in the
Yeah, and it's also corresponding to the car object HP.
Yeah, so this is with which you are operating inside of.
Yeah.
So if you made another function, if you went deeper, it would be the closest object. It's never like,
Okay,
it
that
gets a little confusing. But just remember that if you ever see a this, just look for the next object outside of that function, and that's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So like in C++, we always wrote our get, functions like this. The way you could get around it is like if you didn't want to use this, you don't have to, but you could do something like this and just name it a different variable like that. I don't know if JavaScript does this, but that's why I always kind of use this. But then you could also name this something else. You could do HP here too as well.
And Catherine, aren't you the one taking the Java class, the one where you build the game?
Yeah.
So you'll use getters and setters in that a lot, probably. So
I don't
Yeah.
make any sense either, though. So
well, it's one of those things like how they say you have to hear something 16 times. So like you hear it here and then you hear it there, and it's going to start to click for you.
Yeah. So the reason you use getter and setters is the whole concept of object-oriented programming called encapsulation. And so essentially you would have like this HP would be like a private member variable in which you can't access. Like if it's private in like a language like that, you couldn't access it like this. It wouldn't let you. So if you needed to change that, you would have like a get HP if you needed to get the value for it. Or if you needed to set it, you would have to go set HP like this, and then you put the HP. And that allows you to modify the private member variable.
okay.
But you're basically protecting it, but then allowing you to modify it as well. So you're not actually modifying the variable directly. You're using a function to modify it. So yeah, it's for the whole concept of encapsulation. That's why they do it. Yeah. So yeah. What class do you learn Java in?
So 260.
Oh, 260. And you can take that online?
Yes,
That's good to know.
it's all online. The
Okay.
whole-
I was in a good group, and it was probably my favorite class I ever did. But I knew people from other classes, and we put a group together before we did it. But we
Okay.
had so much fun. You just build a text-based game.
And it's in Java, right? Like,
Yes.
okay, good.
It's all Oregon Trail now. We're building Oregon Trail.
Ooh, that's cool.
Oh, that sounds even more fun.
Yeah, that does sound fun. Yeah, so okay, so that's kind of the whole terms of these methods of how you would set that. And the reason you would want to do like a method like this is say you have something that uses multiple attributes in this case, like this one uses HP and miles. Instead of like writing this all out in code on like a line, right? Which is not that much, but maybe it's a more complex thing. You could just call value of car, and then you would get that. So that's why we use methods and things like that. And so then we're going to go on to, so then there's different ways you can just define the value of car function right here. So in this case, I defined it right here, right, in terms of the whole object. But say I want to add a method after, like I kind of did right here. What you can do is you can actually define it from just this line right here, and in that case. So there's a couple different ways you can do that. I think there's another way you can do it as well. But oh yeah, another way you could do it is you could actually have get HP, right? We could say that is equal to, and then we could have some function get HP like that. And I have a function like that, and I could set it equal to get HP. I think that would work. Yeah, like that as well. So there are different ways you can do it. Personally, I don't know. I don't know what's best practice. Does anybody know what best practice is for objects?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So anyways, we'll go on. So then the last thing I want to talk about is constructors. So essentially what a constructor is you can like define a new object and you can give it a value right off the bat. So you don't have to like, you know, for our case, you could define a car as something like this, and you could give it horsepower. So we could say 100. Say var car, and if we have, you know, some car object initiated already, a capital C car, and let's see, so that was the horsepower, and then the miles, something like this, right? And then we'd essentially have car dot HP, and that would equal to 1,000. Oh, so that would be equal to 1,000, right? If we were to print that out, and then car dot miles. So basically, you could set all the attributes in one line. Does that make sense? What I did right here,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all I'm doing. That's what the power constructors are. And sometimes you want to do that, like, you know, I just want to define everything on one line. Makes code a lot nicer and a lot easier. Okay, so this is how we would do it in JavaScript. So in that case, I'm making like a general function right here for rabbit. And so this is going to take a type right here, and then it's going to say, okay, this type is equal to type. So then what I do is then I create a new rabbit, and I can set it equal to this killer rabbit. So what this is going to do is it's going to make an object, and it's going to have this rabbit associated with it. So, and it will set the type as well. So what it's going to do is it's going to essentially take out kind of the middle ground of how we had to do is we had to first, well, in this case, we could set it right here. And this line, this is one way to set everything on one line as an object. But effectively, we can say, okay, I give it a type in here, and then I could do black rabbit dot type, and it's going to be black in this case. And then you can expand it even more by doing yes, you could expand it even more for like functions and things like that as well. And using this prototype, I'm not really, I need to read on this a little bit more. But effectively giving it a function too as well. So then you almost have this whole general rabbit thing right here. So you could give it, you have this general rabbit. It's almost like a prototype. I don't know what to necessarily call it because it's not an object. Well, it is a function object. And then you're going to almost embed it into this variable right here. But then this is a way to also add like functions. You can say, okay, rabbit.totalpot.speak is going to do this. So then this black rabbit will also not only have type, but it will also have a function speak as well. And so essentially, if I were to define a new one down here, var red rabbit, like this, right, is equal to new rabbit. And then I'm going to have to give it a type. So we're going to say red, like that, right? And then I can just do red rabbit dot speak because it has it already. we added that whole speak thing into here. So this is just another way of essentially adding more power to our objects, whether that's methods or also constructors as well. And this is a way of doing it, is just like making things like this, where I guess you would call this somewhat of a constructor. And then, but then you could also have a further constructor like this, right? You could have function, rabbit, type, and then let's say sex in terms of what type it is. Okay, and we could have this dot type equal to type, and then we could have this dot sex is equal to the sex of the rabbit, male or female. That makes sense. So you could have even more powerful constructors and things like that. And so if we were to go down here, we're to define a new one, we could say var. Actually, let's just use the var of red rabbit. So then there's this one. Let's see. Is it? Say which one I can do. I think this is the way you do it. Red rabbit dot sex, and then it will display the sex in that case. Yeah, any questions? Well, it wouldn't display it, but you could set that equal to another variable. Just say test. All right, any questions?
Nope.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. I'll be here next week.
And what can we look forward to next week?
I don't know. I think I'm off next week. I think I did 3 weeks in a row. So
I think I'm 3 weeks, 4, 5, and 6, and I almost forgot that I had to do it this week. I'm like, oh no.
All right. Any other questions or things to add, corrections? I know I'm not 100% right, but
so I'm pretty sure. I'm not pretty sure, but I've never really thought about this. But you can't really do private anything in JavaScript,
Nope.
right?
No, you can't with
So everything's
JavaScript, nor can you with like Python.
Oh, really?
Oh no, you can't. So like in Python, the way they do it is they put an underscore in front of the variable. And so the reason they do that is because in like every IDE, it puts it at the very bottom of like the variable list. Like, so if I were to talk about, you know what I'm talking about, like
right,
where it starts to do stuff like this.
yeah,
It puts it at the very bottom, so it's like almost invisible. That's their pseudo private memory. It's kind of funny when somebody described that to me. I was like, yeah, whatever. Oh, also one thing that I'm going to post in Slack real quick is this is a really good book that is actually online for JavaScript that is made by No Starch Press, which I really like. They make some good books. So I couldn't believe that this book was actually online. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I love having resources like that.
Yeah. That's where I got most of this because I had submitted something for objects and he was like, all you did was make an object like this, and he didn't actually give me any points. So now I'm going to submit this. Hopefully because like I understood where he's coming from, but I honestly thought, oh, this is all you really do with objects. You just give them like almost like a structure.
right.
But then I was
Just
like, oh,
declare
I
it.
guess you can do methods as well. So, but then you can do some constructors and other fun stuff.
The prototype thing is pretty advanced.
Oh yeah,
As far as I
it is.
understand it, like adding things to the prototype versus like just adding a function. Like if you just add a function, it's only going to add it to that
Yes.
one. But
Yes,
if you add it to
exactly.
the prototype, you can add it to all the
Yeah.
children of that.
Anyone that's going to make it right here. You see this one right here, this and this. These are two different ones, but they'll both have it.
Right.
So it's almost like they're inheriting
That makes sense. I mean, I kind of got it before, but I appreciate you saying it that way.
Yeah, I just these what are they called? Not complete object-oriented languages just drive me nuts. Like
Well, yeah,
Python and this, because it's like they're trying to be, but they're not all the way.
Well, JavaScript is like, hey, object-oriented is a thing. What if everything was an object?
Yeah, exactly.
Literally everything in JavaScript is an object.
Yeah, exactly.
Python's actually the same way, where everything's an object.
So
Yeah.
So it's like a pseudo object oriented.
But with that one, you can actually inherit and make classes and stuff.
right.
Sure.
But this one, I'm just like, what the heck does it mean? All right, guys, who's next?
I can go next since
Okay, sounds good.
I don't really have anything to do with what you talked about, and mine sort of does. So, let me just a second. So you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm talking about JSON, and I've been reading up on or watching some training videos. I may have mentioned this already. I have a membership at work at lynda.com, Lynda. They have some awesome videos if you guys are interested in that. I know that was it Timothy or Dane who talked about JSON last? I forget. But whoever it was, they touched on the basics already, but the basics are really all I understand about JSON, so you're going to get them again. JSON, the spaces in the actual code don't make a difference, so if you want to make it more readable, the video that I was watching, talked about lining up your colons and adding white space and stuff for clarity. And each of your key and value pairs have to have a comma at the end of them, except for the last one. And they kind of explained it like a dictionary, where you go to the key is like the word and the value is like the definition of the word, and that made a lot more sense in my mind thinking about it that way. So each of the key and value pairs need to be enclosed in the curly brackets, and key and values are separated by colons. This part down here, so one of the videos was talking about using JSON and JavaScript, and they talked about how powerful JSON is, that all sorts of other programming languages have adopted JSON. So it's usable with all sorts of other languages, but they talked about how the syntax with JSON, you can use all sorts of special characters in your key and value pair names. But if you do that, it makes it harder to access the data later. And so it's advisable not to use lots of special characters or hyphens or anything like that. So to retrieve the values, normally you'd use the dot notation. So, this example is info dot full name, but you can also use the bracket notation, and bracket notation is good for those key and value pairs that may have special characters. It allows you to access that information that you wouldn't be able to with the dot notation. If you're doing arrays within your JSON, you'd use the square brackets, so lists, and you'd access those with an index number, and of course you start counting at 0. That's always confusing to me. So there are a couple of resources that I thought were useful, and I don't know. Someone may have talked about these already. I don't remember. I tried to watch the video and I couldn't get through it all. But so I have this little JSON file that I've made. So JSONlint.com, this is a JSON validator. So if I put my JSON in there and you validate your JSON, and it's going to come up with an error. And I'm missing a curly bracket at the beginning. And the only reason I know that is because I made that error before when I was trying to write it. So you can validate it. This one's really cool. I was pretty excited about this one. So if you paste it in, and it actually has the JSON lint built right into it. So I add my curly bracket, and it's really cool because it actually lets you edit on both sides. So if I wanted to change my lunch I take my lunch at 11:30. And I could send it back over there, and my lunch over here is now at 11:30. So I thought that was pretty cool. That's really all I've got for you. Do you have any questions for me, or anything to add, or anything you can teach me?
I think that's just one good thing about JSON is it is really simple but really powerful. So it's good to go over it multiple times too. Like you said, a lot of other languages are supporting it as well. So
and apparently
it's here to stay probably.
Twitter actually got rid of. I learned about this in one of my videos. Twitter actually got rid of and maybe someone's mentioned this already. I don't know, but Twitter actually got rid of all their XML and is doing only JSON. So it's like it's a big, widely compatible language. So.
Yeah, I just started an internship, and my whole job is to convert XML to JavaScript or to JSON. Like, that's gonna be my job. So, yeah. So. Because I'm in this other web engineering class, and we're like starting to learn XML. I'm like, does anybody use this anymore? And then I go to my job like day one, and it's like all they use right now. So
yeah, we still use XML and we use JSON, so it's fun.
Yeah,
you probably write a program to do your job.
Oh no, that's what I have to do, right? Like it's programming. Okay. Yeah. Of course, I'm gonna do that.
Manually do it all. That would be a nightmare.
I'm not doing all of it, but they're bringing 3 interns on just for that. It's crazy. So if anybody is in the Salt Lake area and needs an internship, let me know.
Where are you at?
Spillman Technologies in West Valley, or it's kind of Salt Lake. Okay. But yeah, it's really cool place to work too. So and they pay really well interns for. So yeah, if any guys know anybody too, we're looking. So, yeah.
I'm up for a programmer position at my current company, but if that, I'd be looking for something else.
Yeah, let me know because it's a software development too. It's not like QA or anything. So yeah.
Sure.
All right, who's
a couple
next?
of questions.
What was that?
That was Michael, right? About the Spillman. Okay. Yeah. I'll DM you some questions.
Sounds good. All right, who's next?
I think it's me. We just have 3 per night, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
No OT tonight. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
So you know what? You guys are going to get tired of hearing from me about CSS because I signed up late. So I'm CSS girl, I guess. So all of my things are about CSS and transformations and animations and stuff. So this week it was animations. And so I was playing in CodePen again. And this time I used, over here in the HTML, I used a SVG. And in case you didn't know, I don't know how familiar you guys are with using SVGs and doing any of that, but there's a lot of programs where you can design it and then export it. So I can use like Illustrator and design something in Illustrator, and then you can export it and actually get this code right here. You can also manually write it by using border rounder, borders, and anyways, that's tedious. So I vote for using a program to do it. So over here, I've just set up my SVG.
Before you go on, do you know of any free open source?
I don't, but I will look for one for you. Because I know that somebody.
Was curious. I just don't want to spend the $30 a month on Creative Cloud or the $150 for a single license of Illustrator. So
yeah, I tease people like I haven't had to pay for a lot of books for my degree, but I pay for it in software because for design, it's just a lot. The first year was $20 a month, and then since then I've been having to pay $30 a month. So, but I did recently hear that there is some kind of open source one, but I just can't think of what it was off the top of my head because I was thinking maybe when I graduate I would switch over to that. But,
Not GIMP.
what was it?
I don't like GIMP. I've tried GIMP and I just don't like it.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Well, I'm writing that one down so I don't check it. So, okay, so I have my SVG over here in the HTML, and I just set up a div, and I called it card, and then I set up the SVG class as the icon, and so then it redirects it up here to this icon heart here. So where it says symbol ID is the icon heart. So then now we can play with it using CSS. So I specify the icon class here and give it some different items. One thing I learned, and this is just personal preference, I just noticed mine are not alphabetical, but it is kind of nice to alphabetize in your things here. And some people don't think it's worth the time, but in my last class, that was one of the things we did. And it is so nice, especially if you're going to look at somebody else's code. If it's not alphabetized in here, you're like, wait, did they set this? Did they do that? So it's just a nice habit to get into. But like I said, I noticed my left is not in the right place. So we're going to talk about the animation in a minute. But for now, I just filled my SVG with the color teal. I set its height and its width. The position's absolute. And then it's animated right now, so it's not in the right place. But it originally started out 100 pixels from the top and 40 pixels from the left. So then the card, I only did this. I set this just so we could have some kind of drawing space, so you could kind of see the element move around. And this would be good too to kind of set that for if you're working on your application. You might not want your application, if you're trying to make it look like a mobile app, you might not want it to take up your entire screen. So you could set some parameters like that. Then the next thing is, in order to animate it, the key, no pun intended, is these things called keyframes. And so you need a different keyframe for every block of animation that you're going to do. And you can do as many keyframes as you want, as many different animations on the page as you want. So this is what tells how the animation is going to work, and it applies it to the elements on the page. So right here I said at keyframes, and I called it move. And I'm going to start, this is telling where it's going to start from. So it's from, and then I'm going to transform, and I'm going to translate it on X. So your X-axis goes across your page and your Y-axis goes up and down. So in this case, I'm going to start from X at 0, and I'm going to move my heart to X at 300 pixels. And so, let's see if I can get it. I think I've saved this. So I'm going to reload the page here. So you'll see it starting from the side and it goes over to the left. And I have it going pretty slow. Up here in the icon, I'm calling that move. So down here it says keyframes. Oops, sorry, my mouse. I work on a PC during the day and a Mac at night. And so sometimes I get a little lost as to what I'm doing, just so you know. So the keyframes move. So up here on the icon, the animation name is move. And then I've set the duration for 10 seconds, so I can do it for 5 seconds. And it'll go much faster. And then I've set the animation fill mode. And this is kind of a fun one to play with. So if I take this out, sorry guys, whoops, I have no idea what I just did. See how it pops right back to the front again? But if I put it back in, oh, obviously that was something else I copied. And it stops at the end by doing forwards. So there's a few different ways you can do it. You can also do backwards. Which kind of is almost, but it's stopped there. It's almost the same as not putting anything in this particular instance. So before I go on, is that cool? Does anybody have any questions? Oops, sorry. Does anybody have any questions about that?
No, I'm gonna use this for Valentine's Day though.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so then now we can play around with some other ones. I kind of wrote another one in here. I thought I had a third one, but maybe we'll do that one together. So this one, I call it keyframes change. So I'm going to go back up here to the icon and change this from move to change. So now I'll call the other keyframe. And now you can see that my heart is changing colors. And that's because down here I said it's going to go from a fill of red to a fill of yellow. So you notice it completed it and then it went back because my icon is actually teal. So once it completed the animation, it actually went back to its regular state. And then I had put another one on here. I was playing with this, but I might not have saved it. So we'll do one more. We'll do grow. And you can go from, right now I have the height and width set at 4 VW. I can do, oh, I can't remember. So if I type it right. And if I did that right, I don't know if I got all my, I got something wrong. Probably need like a colon or something in here that I don't have.
Try a comma.
Comma, thank you. I can never remember what goes where. And then with you guys all watching,
I think it's a comma, but
that didn't do it. Let me go look over here on animations. Let's see if it's going to show it.
oh,
Semicolon. And then I'll go back to that because I want to show you guys a couple of things there. There you can see this goes from the smaller size to the bigger size. So there's also, I think I shared this before, but there's this link on this Animatable or whatever. It shows all these different ways that you can use the different animations just by, I didn't know it did that actually. Last time I clicked on it, it didn't do this, but why am I? this is actually kind of cool. It's showing this. So I couldn't get it to show me before, so I have no idea how I did this, because usually this page just has them on there and it doesn't give you all this information. I don't know what I did different this time. But this is kind of nice because it can show you what it started from and what it goes to create these different items. It's kind of fun.
Did you put that in the SharePoint already? Or
I
not
believe I
SharePoint,
did, but I'll
Slack?
put it in there again.
Sweet.
So, and it's just because you can kind of like play with it. And like I said, I don't know how I did this part though. I went and looked at his fork on GitHub, and I don't know if somehow when I did that, I got into this one, because usually it has all of these on here. When you hover over them, it does it. So I'm going to share this. It might be, maybe I'm actually on a different page than I realized. I'll put this in Slack. Might be at this different page. And then, of course, so on W3 Schools, you can get all different kinds of ideas of what you can do on there to play with it. So, any questions?
Sweet.
I feel like with us teaching these things is more for the person teaching, because while I knew how to do this, trying to understand, and I still didn't do a good job, is how to explain what keyframes were and how to do them. It made me retain it a lot better. I feel more confident about it now, even though I did a bunch of it last semester. So
Yeah, teaching definitely makes you have to strain a little bit more, understand the concepts.
Yep. Oh, and one other thing, and we kind of talked about this for the transforms, you can also do the speed. You can change the speed on here. So if I do animation, timing, and let's move this back to move. And you can do ease in, and so it starts out slow and then gets faster, and you can do the ease out that we talked about before. So they're the same ones that we talked about last time with the transforms. So there's like ease, linear, ease in and out, and cubic Bezier, where you can set your own parameters. So that's all I got for this week's animation thing. I'll come up with something better for next CSS. I think I have, what do I do next time? Let's see where I have in week 8, transitions and animations, and then in week 9, transforms. So
I'm excited.
I bet.
All right. So anybody else have anything else to add? All right, I'll stop the recording then.